Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the observance of Martin Luther King Jr. Day 2023. This is sponsored by the Williston-Richmond Rotary Club. And my name is Debbie Ingram. I'm a member of the club and a longtime resident of Williston, and we're really happy to be sponsoring this event today and to have such great participation by so many community members. And so this will be a mixture of musical tribute, a couple of videos, a poem, and then remarks by different members of the communities of Williston and Richmond. So we'll start off with our first speaker this morning, Dennis Francis.
Thank you very much. My name is Dennis Francis. I am a member of the Williston Racial Equity Partnership, also a volunteer with the Williston CJC, and I am a resident of Williston. I just want to thank the organizers of this event and also those of you who have come here to participate. My remarks are in regards to the I Have a Dream speech, which was delivered by Dr. Martin Luther King. And I want to share some ideas that I have gained from that speech. And hopefully these ideas will be helpful to you. Now, Dr. King's celebrated speech, I Have a Dream, is a masterpiece of rhetoric magnificence. It has reached countless millions who are charmed by the persuasive figure of speech and its substantive content. Today it will be played and listened by perhaps millions. And most likely tomorrow, many people will forget it, not only tomorrow, but throughout the rest of the year. But for many of us, this inspired speech is a proclamation of optimistic hope to the menacing and complex problem of racial prejudice and social injustice. I would not recite the racial and social grievances which Dr. King had described as the Negro's legitimate content. But I want to highlight the ideas of gradualism, the importance of time, inclusiveness, and non-aggression, which I believe all of us can benefit from. Dr. King vigorously advocated that we should not use gradualism as a panacea to help to heal our racial scars. Gradualism, as I interpret it, it has two implications to me. People use gradualism to keep the dominated position they have over other people. And they also interpret gradualism to believing that people, the people who certain benefits should be given to, they are not competent enough to manage these benefits. So therefore it should be given to them gradually. But Dr. King said, there is no more time, I quote, to engage in the luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. He further went on to say that when the speech was given in August 28, 1963, he said, they came there to remind the nation of the fierce urgency of now. Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy. And in chapter 6, in the 6th paragraph of that speech, Dr. Martin Luther mentioned now is the time 6 times. Time is a very valuable commodity. We cannot purchase it. It's a precious gift that all of us have. And it is given to us to educate ourselves, and those who we must engage with. We should take time to educate ourselves about racial justice. We are not going to receive a magical portion that will show us how to be empathetic to others, how to engage with others. This is something we must learn and practice on a daily basis. We should spend time to clear the pathway of racial ignorance. Maybe you can join a group, participate in a group in which they discuss racial issues. And this will help us as individuals to be able to engage with each other on racial issues and not to become antagonistic with one another. There are many forces in our society battling for our minds to keep us under the umbrella of racial prejudice. We need to take time to deliberate, but when it's time for action, we should stop thinking and act decisively. When we engage in time, or when we share our time with other people, it shows the depth of care we are sharing with them and they are sharing with us. Dr. King spent an enormous amount of time trying to improve the lives of citizens of this country. And so likewise, we should spend time trying or to continue the dream that Dr. Martin Luther had. The dream speech is also a model of inclusiveness. He said, the Negro community must not distrust all white people. Their presence here today, even at this meeting, is evidence that they believe their destiny is tied up with our destiny. And they have come to realize that their freedom is inextricably bound with our freedom. He said, we cannot walk alone. This is a demonstration of his inclusiveness. Today we have a lot of DEI programs, and these programs could incorporate many of the speeches or learn from many of the speeches that Dr. King had proclaimed. Notably about Dr. King is the theme of nonviolence. Dr. King was not naive that there would not be violence when he confronted the system in which he was dealing with. And therefore he took the preemptive action to say to his followers and them. He said he urged those involved in the movement for freedom not to satisfy their thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. You just imagine January 6, 2021. Bitterness and hatred nullifies the effort of bringing about racial harmony and healing. Racial prejudice is ingrained in our culture, but it does not mean that nothing should not be done about it. It did not evolve with the Big Bang event, but is the construction of human devices for their advantage. Therefore, it must be challenged until its impact is diminished, that it can no longer hold a prominent influence in our communities. And in closing, I would just like to say that, and I read a quote from a book. It's entitled The Extraordinary Popular Delusion and the Madness of Crowd. People, it has been said, think in herds. We go mad in herds. But we can only recover our senses slowly, one by one. We are subjected to the negative effect in our society. But one by one, each one of us can overcome it, turn it to our advantage and ourselves and our society. This is how life improves and civilization advances. Let us make Dr. King's dream our dream also. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dennis. Our next speaker is Kennedy Jensen.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here with us today. My name is Kennedy Jensen, and I am a senior at Mount Mansfield Union High School. I am the director of our student-led anti-racism program, and I sit on both my district school board and our ABAR Anti-Bias and Racism Council as a student representative. I am here today to speak on behalf of our youth. Now, as a senior in high school for the past 10 years, each year at some time in some form, I have been asked to reflect on Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement. At times, I was asked to explore King's rhetoric, his knack for well-done dichotomies or intonation and thoughtful wording. I was asked to explore his words, and he is an excellent writer. In other classes, I was given a documentary or a novel, diving into the Alabama bus boycotts, the Freedom Riders, and King's famous March on Washington. I was instructed to observe King's actions, and his actions spoke powerfully. And while there is so much to say about both his actions and his words, I would like to take my time with you all today to explore his mindset. Most blatantly, King embodied resilience. He was committed to achieving true virtue, a definition defined solely by his standards. He remained uninfluenced by his opposition, by legal constraints, and even imprisonment, as he continued to work from within local jail cells. He remained uninfluenced by the temptation of violence, urging other members of his movement to remain peaceful, even in the face of violent opposition. He remained uninfluenced by fear, withstanding threats, beatings, and assaults, and when surrounding society continued to punish, isolate, and threaten King and his party, he sought to change society, not his personal values. And I think that almost more prominent than his resilience stands his less frequently acknowledged belief in his own dignity. King was resilient, but he was never compliant in his own oppression. In King's famous I Have a Dream speech, which he performed during the March on Washington in 1963, King shares the now well-known sentiment. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. This concept, radical at the time, seemed customary to members of my generation. Sitting in history class, we would have to fight to imagine a time where this message and this nature would inspire violence or hatred from so many other members of our nation. Though in preparing for this event, as I reflected on my experience and my involvement in social justice work throughout the presumed progressive state of Vermont, I have come to realize that not only is King's sentiment not as customary as I had once believed, but that substituting his word race for religion, sexuality, gender, or ability creates the same feelings of violence and hatred from 50 years ago. Elements of King's initial exodus have changed. Human rights issues have evolved in the past 50 years, but what remains consistent is the constant battle between equality and our fundamental unwillingness to change. As humans, we are programmed to become uncomfortable in the face of change, because in our earlier days, consistency was vital to survival. Then and now, when faced with a change, large or small, our brain must actively choose to experience discomfort. And unsurprisingly, the larger the change, the more uncomfortable we feel. As an 18-year-old, I would like to believe that there are some pretty important changes coming up on our country's horizon. Large changes. Changes that will push us towards justice and equality. Changes that will make us kinder, more compassionate, empathetic. And if there is one thing I can ask of you all here today, on behalf of the youth in both our local communities and in my generation, it is that you alter your approach to change, that you adopt the habit of seeing change as uncomfortable, yet necessary, that you remain resilient, refusing to compromise your values in the face of a broken society. And lastly, above all else, I would ask that you maintain your dignity, your right to life, your freedom, and your justice. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kennedy. And now I'd like to share with you a very short video montage of people getting prepared for that famous March on Washington in 1963. This was made available for groups like ours by the SALT project. And now I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Denise Noble.
Hey there, good morning. Thank you for having me here. I'm a resident of Richmond, and I have 3 kids and a husband, a couple dogs. And I'm like so many of us who hold white privilege. My family and I had an awakening, and I know that word is a little bit trite. When George Floyd was murdered during the pandemic. And since then, I've become really active in a variety of different ways. And so I'm kind of wearing a couple of hats. As a resident of Richmond, I'm really involved with Williston Racial Equity. And as a multi-generational Episcopalian, I'm involved with the Vermont diocese of Vermont and the Episcopal Church, and they have a racial healing commission. And then on reflecting today, there's so much I could say about my journey, and thinking about the leadership and incredible foresight and strength of Dr. King. There's a couple of quotes I want to interweave in telling a little bit of my story and giving you guys some more information about some of the change, the local change that is happening by people who have been transformed and are taking those steps. So Dr. King said, "The time is always right to do what is right," at a speech at Oberlin College in '64. And I know that's very simple, but I think they're very, very powerful words to live by. You don't have to wait to do things. Any little change, any little bit of doing what is right is always good. And that's easier said than done for sure, but definitely powerful words. So part of my journey was feeling like I needed to take action. And as I learned more about what it means to hold white privilege and to try and be an anti-racist, I really embraced the idea that systemic change is complicated and complex, but one of the necessary ways to change that is to go through changing policy and educating and increasing people's awareness. So as part of my Richmond Racial Equity experience, I am part of the policy and policing subgroup of that. And we have 4 subgroups: an education group, a reparations group, policy and policing, and I am completely, no, maybe there's 3, sorry. And each group has done a ton of action and reaching out to the public, and there's a long list, but I won't get into that now. We have a Facebook site, we have a website. Most recently, we've been working on a community oversight in Richmond, which is not like what sort of the standard oversight board, but it's a different and new approach. We've been working with town officials to do that. And then my other hat, one of the things that I found most powerful in this journey is working with the Episcopal Church. And one of the messages that I find really powerful is that we who hold white privilege must learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable, because we have a lot of work to do and it's not easy work. And my time with the Diocese of Vermont has been definitely powerful in a lot of ways. And one of the programs that was developed by the Episcopal Church is called Sacred Ground. And I've been facilitating this group. It's a film and reading based dialogue series on race. It's grounded in faith. And the format is you meet in circles, and it's really about the transformation of your heart. You read material, you watch videos that are absolutely horrendous and disturbing, but it's the real history. It's the true story of a variety of different racial groups. It's incredibly powerful, incredibly transformative. And I am so grateful that I was able to experience that. And I am ever more grateful that I'm able to facilitate it, because people doing this program really are transformed. They can't unlearn what they learn. And as we do this bit by bit, we can continue to make change. So I feel like for me, some of the quotes that Dr. King that really resonate most with me are his quotes about love, because I am very much that person who says love is the answer to everything, right? But it's also so important that it's not just the mushy-gushy, I love you kind of love, but the love that has power, and the love that is difficult, and the love that transforms. So I will close with a couple of quotes from Dr. King that really resonated with me. The power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love. And then the last, well, okay, I'm going to go with 2 because I couldn't decide. This would be, I guess, my charge to y'all. And I'm sure folks are doing this, but just a reminder, make a career of humanity. Commit yourself to the noble struggle for equal rights. You will make a better person of yourself, a greater nation of your country, and a finer world to live in. And that was from the March for Integrated Schools in April '59. And then last, but certainly not least, is darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. And that's from his book, Strength to Love, 63. And those words completely resonate with me and stick in my heart. And I am so grateful for everything that Dr. King did for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Denise. We appreciate your remarks. And now we're very fortunate to have a musical recording from the outstanding performer, Vermont performer, Carabo. And I wonder, Carabo, if you'd like to say a few words of introduction before I play your piece. You're muted.
Sorry about that. Yes, thank you so much for inviting me to this forum, this wonderful group of people, including young people. So happy to see young people in this group talking about their experience in this new generation. And the song I'm about to sing is titled Black and Blue. And one of the top issues for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Was to end the struggles of discrimination and segregation that resulted from slavery. And he advocated for self-identity. He called it having a sense of somebodyness and self-worth. Indeed, he said, like one of the students, I had them saying that each person, quoting Martin Luther King, that each person would be judged by the content of their character rather than the color of their skin. So this song, Black and Blue, written by Bobby Mason and Turner Lawson, captured how Black people are indeed affected by racism, which sadly is still embedded in the very fabric of the American society. So here, Black and Blue.
To be proud, still I'm not allowed to speak and know I'm being heard. It seems rather strange, some things never change, some lessons they never get learned. I've come a long way since back in the days in Dixie when cotton was king. The heartache remains from the storms I've been through, and right now I'm black and blue. I stayed on my knees, I cried and I grieved. It's hard to forgive and forget, but memories untie, and I'm still asking why people treat people like that. God looks at my skin, I'm lovely to him. He made me say it was good, but people still judge. It's so sad that it's true. God knows why I'm black and blue. Have nothing to gain by shifting the blame. but I'll no longer be blue.
What a beautiful piece. Thank you so very much, Garbo, for sharing that with us. Very meaningful.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. And now our next speaker is Piet Grobler.
Isn't it, I'm sorry, isn't it Pastor Paul?
No.
Oh, okay. All right.
No, it's you. Sorry if you weren't quite ready.
Yeah,
But yes,
that's fine.
it is you.
Good morning to all on this very important celebratory day. My husband and I, are grateful members of the Williston Federated Church, and we're also residents of Williston. I was born into a loving, albeit white, Afrikaner family in South Africa, exactly 70 years ago. A family not without faults and weaknesses, believe me. I grew up amongst racism, aka apartheid. As a family, we were among the privileged. I know under a regime of racism and apartheid that the oppressed suffers unspeakable trauma and losses. And yet I also know that the souls of the oppressors become crushed, often destroyed by their own actions or inactions. I did not grow up with a solid knowledge about and of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., but I developed an understanding and deep appreciation about the striking resemblances between Nelson Mandela, the first Black president of South Africa, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Neither one of these men was without their faults, struggles, and human frailties. However, I choose to think of them both as saints. Up front and foremost, they each stood for the one single but very complex goal: that every man, woman, and child, regardless of the color of their skins, should have, enjoy, and celebrate equality. Dr. King, as did President Nelson Mandela, Madiba, as some South Africans still refer to him with, both advocated and stood strongly for peaceful actions to achieve this goal. Dr. King often testified that he was militantly nonviolent in his efforts to eradicate racism. Both were awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, Dr. King in 1964 and President Mandela in 1993. We, my husband and our 2 daughters and I, have been and continue to be filled with gratitude to have experienced the privilege to bear citizenship of the USA since the 1990s. We immigrated to Vermont since my husband was recruited by UVM Medical School. My path has been and continues to be crossed by the paths of many wise men and women, some of who are here in our midst today. For whose teachings and guidance and exemplary actions to address and remove the grip of racism, I am eternally grateful. Dr. King was a man of peace in a time of war. Let us be people of peace in a time of a world in turmoil. But let's be militant about it. I have a deep and sincere appreciation for being able to be present and participate in this extraordinary celebration in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Thank you, and let's keep the dream alive.
Great words. Thank you so very much. Yeah. And now our last speaker will be Reverend Paul Iyer.
Thank you, Debbie. I'm wearing multiple hats today. I'm a member of the Williston-Richmond Rotary Club that sponsors this event. I'm a member of the Williston Racial Equity Partnership, about which I'll speak, and also I'm privileged to be pastor of Williston Federated Church. What an honor it is to be a part of this very important program. On this day, we do indeed, as the previous speaker, Piet Grobler from my congregation, said so eloquently, we are seeking to keep Dr. King's dream alive. And we recall that dream that we've referenced so often today, a dream of a society where artificial barriers of race and class are overcome, a dream where indeed peace and justice prevail. And on this day, we are moved to recommit ourselves to the important work of seeking to make that dream a reality, or as Piet said, to keep that dream alive. Here in our own communities, there are multiple meaningful opportunities to advance that powerful vision put forward by Dr. King. One group doing significant work is indeed the Williston Racial Equity Partnership. And this group, now entering its third year, has been instrumental in elevating the importance of diversity, equity, inclusion, and anti-racism in our community. The Williston Racial Equity Partnership has provided education and training for town employees and has hosted community dialogue. The partnership has worked with agencies, town boards, businesses, and community leaders to help build awareness and to seek to transform the status quo. The partnership has worked hard to offer a voice and presence within the community and to advocate for meaningful and sustainable change. The partnership helped to articulate a statement of values embracing diversity, equity, inclusion, anti-racism, and restorative justice. And in October of 2022, just last fall, a version of these values were adopted by the Williston Select Board as a set of guiding principles for the town of Williston. There are a multitude of ways for you to become actively involved with the partnership. If you're interested, you're invited to contact Executive Director Krista Lee McSweeney of the Williston Community Justice Center to learn more. And another opportunity in our area to strive toward Dr. King's dream is through the continuing conversations about racism hosted by Williston Federated Church. These conversations are not unlike those conversations sponsored by the Episcopal Diocese, about which Abigail Noble was speaking just earlier. And indeed, each Thursday evening, this group involves not just members of our church, it involves members of our community more broadly. We gather at 5 p.m. on Thursdays via Zoom. We gather for conversation about how we respond to racism, both within society and within ourselves. And over the last 2.5 years, we've grappled with this question. Our efforts have been informed by insights from interviews with writers like Isabel Wilkerson, Robin DiAngelo, and Resmaa Menakem. We've wrestled with contemporary issues such as affirmative action and criminal justice reform. including dialogue with our state's attorney, Sarah George, who's with us this morning. We've conversed with community leaders. We've worked hard to make these weekly conversations a safe space, or better yet, a brave space to honestly explore tough questions and to reflect on real life episodes, even in our own lives, real life episodes that raise the same question that John Quinones often asks on ABC television: what would you do? Some of the participants in our weekly conversations have been part of today's program. I mentioned Piet Grobler, who just spoke moments ago. And at the outset of our program, we heard from Dennis Francis, who also is a regular participant in our ongoing dialogue. If you'd like to join them in these compelling conversations, I invite you to contact me, Pastor Paul Iyer at Williston Federated Church. I'll include some contact information in the chat section momentarily. And then, having heard from you, I will gladly share the Zoom link for our weekly conversations. If we are to bring Dr. King's dream into reality, the work is ongoing. I'm honored to have shared these close-to-home examples of ways to participate in that very important and continuing work. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Pastor Paul. When this day was first declared a holiday, the idea was not only to mark the great contributions that Dr. Martin Luther King made to our society, but it was also to serve, to act as a day of service. And so it is really important for us to be aware of the different opportunities in Williston that we can serve and contribute to one another. And thank you all. Thank you all of our speakers and Carabo, our performer. Thank you also, many thanks to Krista Lee McSweeney, who Pastor Paul mentioned as the chair of the Williston Racial Equity Partners group. She was instrumental in helping to organize this and to promote it. And thank you to the Williston-Richmond Rotary Club for sponsoring it. I do have one final set of photos to show you, and I'm going to read a poem by Gwendolyn Brooks in the background. And then you can leave as you'd like. This observance will be over. We'll kind of leave in quiet, but I hope that you will leave having reflected on your place in our society, and that you will keep fighting the good fight and keep spreading the love that Dr. King wanted us to do. Thank you.
On Sarah, say that because I did.
Amy.
Martin Luther King Jr., April 4th, 1968, by Gwendolyn Brooks. A man went forth with gifts. He was a prose poem. He was a tragic grace. He was a warm music. He tried to heal the vivid volcanoes. His ashes are reading the world. His dream still wishes to anoint the barricades of faith and of control. His word still burns the center of the sun above the thousands and the 100,000s. The word was justice. It was spoken. So it shall be spoken. So it shall be done.